Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. I'm the Last Wanderer, and today I have a very powerful moss farm to show to all of you that can either provide you with a lot of moss and other related blocks, or provide a ton of bone meal. As mentioned before, with this farm, you can get decorative blocks like the moss block, the moss carpet, and both types of azalea, the regular and flowered. You'll also get seeds, which in most cases you're better off composting, though they can still be used to breed chickens or tame parrots. You can also compost one, more, or even all of these items into bone meal, which is super useful in almost every single other plant-based farm. And for some odd reason, Mojang decided it would be a good idea if moss farms always produced a surplus of bone meal. What this means is whenever you use one bone meal in this farm, you can compost some of the items you got back into that one bone meal and still have items remaining. And that's the primary mechanics of this farm here. Whenever a bone meal is used on this moss block here, water will flush the grass, azaleas, and moss carpet away into this item stream. Then these stone generators will push blocks into the moss blocks, popping them up into this water stream here. What this water stream does is it cycles the items around so that each of these dispensers will be refueled with more bone meal. Then the surplus items will come out here. You can do whatever you want with these surplus items, including using them as decorative blocks or composting them into bone meal. One of the best parts about this farm is that it's a modular design, and every module operates mostly independent from each other. It even uses its own products to refuel on bone meal, not needing some complex centralized composting setup to return bone meal to every single module. Each module is also really easy to add or disconnect, since the only thing they share in common is redstone connecting to the clock circuit. Over here is an example of a multiple module moss farm. All the modules in this example are stacked vertically because one, that's really easy to do. All you have to do is add in these 4 new blocks each time to continue bringing the clock signal upward, and because this farm will actually fit within a 4 chunk area, which means it can be chunk loaded by a portal chunk loader. That is pretty significant considering the fact that moss farms are not random tick based. That means if you chunk load this farm with a portal chunk loader, it can run no matter where you are in your world and will always be producing the moss blocks or bone meal. I did still make sure though that this farm could be tiled in both of the horizontal directions, so that option remains open if you choose to do that. I must note, however, that this farm isn't exactly tiled the most eloquently from the right or left of another module, as compared to just adding another module to the back or the top, but it still functions. Another unique part of this moss farm is that the moss block that is bone mealed is actually underneath the stone pad that it converts to moss. Weirdly, other moss farms will usually have the moss block above the stone pad, which results in a much more complex dispenser setup where it's much harder to power the dispenser and feed it additional bone meal. That can all be solved though by just having the moss block underneath the farm and using a little trick. Ordinarily, moss blocks will only spread moss to blocks that are next to them or below them, like this. However, if we put literally any other block, one block diagonally up, like this, including water, glass, string, you name it, when we bone meal this moss block, suddenly, wherever there's a block obstructing it, it'll spread upwards, which is what we do in this farm here with these slabs, observers, piston, water, etc. That allows this moss farm to have a much more simplistic design than other moss farms. Another trick this farm uses are these dropper and hopper item cyclers here. There's 2 on the top and 2 on the bottom. The 2 on the top ensure that the water from these trapdoors recedes every 3rd activation of this clock, so that these ones down here can bone meal this moss block on every 3rd activation. Doing it every 3rd time, as opposed to every 2nd or 4th activation of the clock, ensures that this farm is the most efficient. The rest of the redstone is just used to generate stone in these stone generators, which needs precise timings along with the redstone clock to ensure that cobblestone is never accidentally generated, because that would break this farm. And speaking of the clock, this is just a simple subtraction-based comparator clock. Here it is working with the full farm, and this module works exactly as I've previously described. Every third activation of the clock, the water recedes, and the moss block is bone-mealed to generate new moss and other plants above. Then the water comes back and flushes it all down. This actually isn't the fastest clock you can use with these stone generators though. At the end of the video, I'll show you a way to modify this farm so you can make it a little faster. And with all that said, let's get started with the tutorial. Here are all the items you'll need for each module. Now, notably, this does not include the components you'll need for the clock, which I'll show later, or the components to connect each module. So, let's start with some ambiguous items. These are dispensers here, which you'll need 2 of, and 18 droppers. All of these components are exact, including sticky pistons, hopper, note block, and with the trapdoor, you can obviously use any type of trapdoor. With the honey block, you can either use honey blocks or a combination of ender chests and regular chests, which I'll show later in the tutorial. You also need 2 string, 1 ice. It can either be regular ice as long as you have no nearby light source, packed ice or blue ice, a magma block, 28 obsidian or other non-pushable block, 64 stone, yes, this has to be stone, 10 composters, and these stairs and slabs can be any type of stair or slab, as long as they don't burn. Then, you can have a sign of your choice. You also need 2 water buckets. Technically, you'll need more water sources, but with 2, you can make an infinite water source, and at least 4 lava sources. You could use more, but 4 is the absolute minimum you need. You also need 2 moss blocks and 2 stacks of bone meal to get started. There's also 5 stacks of regular blocks. This is just an approximation, not the exact number you'll need. Some of these blocks can be switched out with transparent blocks like glass, but for any of these blocks that are underneath redstone dust, they'll have to be solid. Finally, you'll need 2 non-stackable items of your choice and 2 regular items of your choice. For the clock, these are the components. Just a lever, comparator, 2 repeaters, 2 dust, 1 observer, 1 sticky piston, and 7 regular blocks. Let's start off with the Bonemeal system of this farm. Have a dropper facing up, dispenser up, and a moss block on top. Now, leave a 7 block gap, and make the same thing. Now on the inside, put a hopper here, hopper there, same on the other side, 2 composters on both hoppers, and 2 more hoppers facing down on both sets of composter. Now, let's add in the water stream that cycles the items around, some of which are used to fill up the composter, which in turn refills the dispenser with bone meal. Start off with 4 blocks like this. Another block here, magma block. This just turns the water on top into a bubble column, ensuring no items get stuck. Another block, some ice, and then some more blocks that end right here. To align the items, either use honey blocks, like this, or a combination of chests and ender chests. You cannot put a chest on top of a hopper. You'd have to put an ender chest, since chests have inventory, that'll block the hoppers from working. Same for the other side, either ender chests and chests, or just a bunch of honey blocks. Then add in the walls, which is just some more blocks. Add a 1 gap here, because that's where your items will be dropping down. And fill in the other walls, like this. Now on a slab here, water here, and water there. Next up, let's get into some of the redstone. Nothing too complicated for now, just laying the groundwork for later. First, put 2 blocks diagonal like this, dust, a note block, 2 observers, and a piston right here. That'll punch out anything that grows on the moss. So, same thing for the other side, 2 blocks diagonal, dust, note block, 2 observers, and a piston. Now, we just need the floor, so some slabs like this. You don't need a block there. And just make sure it goes all the way around the whole 7x7 area. Just skipping this block and this block here. We'll get to that later. And same for the other side. Alright, we can now start working on the foundations for the stone generators. Let's start here with a 7-wide strip of obsidian, just from one end of this platform to the other. It's just used to stop excess stone from generating and breaking the farm. We need a 1-block gap, and making a second 7-wide strip. Then, we can just skip these 2 blocks here, and then on this 3rd block, a 15-block long strip of just normal blocks to put powered rails on. These will be used later for some of the circuitry of this farm. Now we can just go up 2 blocks, another 15-wide strip of normal blocks, have redstone dust going all the way down, and then redstone torches on every single block except this center block here. Now all we need to do is repeat this on the other side. Just go 2 blocks out from this platform, put your 7-wide strip, skip a block, 7-wide strip, 3 blocks out, add in another row of 15 blocks, and you get the picture. Just continue mirroring the other side. Let's continue with the stone generators by adding in the observers and pistons. Let's come over here and put 7 observers in a row right in front of the redstone torches, and do that for both sides. Now, we can place pistons facing down. Make sure they're just regular pistons, not sticky ones. And underneath these observers, we can put sticky pistons. Then down here, we can place more observers. And finally, one more row of pistons. And then just repeat this with the other side. The last part of the stone generators to build is, well, the actual stone generators. So let's start with some blocks here, and another 3 here, and same with the other side. Then we can add some temporary stone in that'll just hold the liquids in place. The rest of the stone will actually be made by the stone generators. Then we need some stairs. We curve them in this fashion like so, and having an ending stair like that. Same with the other side. Now all you need to do is waterlog all the stairs. Place a few more blocks above the stairs. And put down your lava to make the stone. Now you can put more lava sources down, but you only really need 1 for the farm to work, as the lava will spread out. And that's making your stone. Now, just repeat this for the other side. now that the stone generator is almost operational, let's just finish wiring it up and then generate the first stone platform. So let's come over here, put an observer facing this redstone torch, another one facing that observer, and then a block there. Same thing on the other side, observer, second observer, and block. Then let's come out here, place a block, repeater and 2 ticks, another block, and then observer facing out. On the other side, we'll do something similar, but slightly different. We'll have a repeater and 2 ticks just like before, but then a redstone dust, and then the observer facing out. Now, let's generate that first stone platform, put a lever here, and wait for the... Now you have to be careful though, that you don't accidentally generate cobblestone or break the farm, so wait a few seconds between each update of this observer. If you did accidentally make cobblestone or break the farm, don't panic, just repair what you broke. With the stone generators finished, we can now finish up the item collection system. First, let's come over here. I made a slight mistake earlier. These 2 blocks don't actually need to be here. But we do need 3 blocks up like this, and then 1 on top. On this side, we'll only place the 3 blocks and leave this drop chute here in case you want to put another module on top. But now we can put a sign here, and then water here to flush the items down there. To flush the items that generate on top of the stone off, all we have to do is add blocks here like this, another row on the back. But the one thing I should point out is if this is your first module, you need a glass block or other transparent block in the center. Then we can put up some trapdoors, click them open, and waterlog them. Then just place some solid blocks on top. And we can do the other side. This next step should only be done for the first module of your moss farm. In order to update these 2 observers here and here, we need to run a rail line between them. So, starting from here, let's place a block here, and bring it all the way down, across from this dropper, and then 1 block down. Then, let's just fill the space in between with powered rails. Now we can start with a clock for this farm, start with this upwards facing sticky piston, an observer facing away, a block here, and then another one here, and then 4 like this. And we can put a repeater and 4 ticks here, another one and 4 ticks here, dust, dust, a comparator, and another block out front with a lever on it, and the comparator set to subtract mode. That finishes your clock, though we can't turn it on quite just yet because the farm is not done. Alright, now's the time to add more modules to this farm, if you so choose. Your next module can either be built above the farm, behind it, or to the side. Now, I personally prefer either building up, since that's pretty easy to do, or behind, since that's the second easiest to do, though there is some finickiness. The side one is a bit of a pain, but if you have to fit it into a space, you can do that. Now, I'll show you how to add in each of your modules. For the one above, go to the center, skip a block, place your dropper, do that on the other side, and just restart this tutorial from the beginning, starting with those 2 droppers already placed. Now, if you want to go behind, count 9 blocks from this dropper here, place your dropper. You don't have to place these glass blocks, these are just for me checking, but you would want to double check this because if you make your measurement off, that's going to be a lot of pain. Then go 7 blocks. This is your second dropper, and you can start the farm all over again from the beginning. Now, if you want to go to the side, that's a bit of longer stretch. You need to count 16 blocks. And then put your dropper down, skip the 7, and place your other dropper down. Then just go back to the beginning of the tutorial and make your new module. Though I want to just emphasize this real quick. This concrete block here does not count. If you're counting the concrete block, that's 17 blocks there. It's 16 glass blocks away from that concrete block there. One other thing I should point out is what parts each of these new modules will be sharing with the old one. For instance, this side module here will be sharing this redstone line here and this rail line, so you don't actually have to rebuild that, obviously, and there's no reason to rebuild this observer contraption here, because that just carries the signal down to the rail line, so you won't need it for this side. You will still need it for the other side, though. If you build the back module here, what you have to do is come over here, place a block there, and 3 blocks here, repeater, block, block, and then break those. These concrete blocks here will act as those repeaters here, so when you get around to it, just continue the redstone line here, like so, with the torches on the side, just to clear up any confusion. And the end drop recycler that controls the waterlogged trapdoors will be shared between the two modules. Finally, this top module here won't actually be sharing any parts with a pre-existing module. I've gone ahead and finished each of these 3 modules. Now I'll just be showing you how to connect up the redstone. First, come over here, place 4 blocks, and put a repeater on 4 ticks on the first 3, and on the last one, put the repeater on 3 ticks. Then put an upwards facing sticky piston with a block on it, 2 more blocks with repeaters on it, and just bring this block line all the way up to the face of this observer here. And for the rest of these blocks, just put powered rails. Now this back module here is actually all connected up. Just make sure you have all the redstone in the correct places with this repeater here, this one there, and make sure this redstone dust line is directly between the 2 sets of trapdoors. For the top module, what you need to do is come to the center, put an observer, a block, a note block. Then be careful removing this block since there'll be water behind it. Quickly place down an observer, place another block, and like down here, we're going to use a rail line. So all you need to do is place your rails, starting from this end, and it's connected up. The one other thing you need to do, though, is come down here. You'll notice there's a couple of gaps here. Just fill them in so none of your items spill out. I just want to once again reiterate the fact that you don't actually have to build any of these extra modules. You could just keep it as the base module, or you could make it as the base module plus one other module repeated over again, or any combination. Such as this one over here, which is 12 modules, using all 3 of the ones I showed over there, plus 2 more that are sort of different, like this module that goes up, and it's like this one over here, but it only has powered rails going to one side. So if you're building a second module on top of that one, you want to repeat this one. Now, if you want to build another module in this space here, you just want to build this one again with this central redstone line here being shared between the 2. Once you've finished all the modules you wish to build, you can move on with this penultimate step. First, come down here, and in every single dropper, put around about a stack of bone meal, and come over here, place a hopper, composter, and hopper with string on top. This string is important, otherwise moss will not generate on the block above. And just do that to every single one of these dropper dispenser towers on the bottom floor of your modules. Now, any modules that you build above other modules, you don't actually have to build this thing again. You can just put a trapdoor here and build a dropper with bone meal. Then, once you're all done with that, you can go on to each of these dropper cyclers, the ones at the top that control the trapdoors and water, and put a single item in them. Just make sure that that item is put in this top dropper right here. Once you finish with those dropper cyclers, with these bottom dropper cyclers here, you want to just put one non-stackable item right in front of the dropper that's in front of this comparator. And now you've almost finished the farm. The final step is simply to add an item collection streams. So if you only built one module, or you built each module on top of each other in a stack, you can probably do something different, but you'll have to add these in if you have either of these side modules. So first, come to your first module, go down, and at the bottom here, place a block, and place ice in each of the directions of your other modules. And simply encase the items falling down better, come over here, put a sign, put the sign on this block, and one on this block. Now, simply bring the blocks for the water stream out a little bit. Then go to the back, and just keep placing a line of blocks all the way until you get to the drop chute of your next module. Fill in any gaps in the drop chute, and if you have any other modules, you can also, at this time, connect them up with the water stream. If not, you can put your water under the drop chute, then fill in the surrounding blocks. This begins the arduous task of putting packed ice and a sign every time the water ends, and continuing building your water stream back to the start. And with that we're done, but that's because I was only connecting up a single module. Now, if you want to connect up a side module, it's literally the exact same process, so I'll speed through this. Also, one thing I forgot, you can put a roof on these water streams if you don't want some pesky zombies stealing your items. Finally, it's time to put one last water source here, and then you can expand this farm into any storage system or compost setup you have. Although the tutorial is technically finished, there are a few more things I'd like to show. First up, a composting setup in case you want to turn the products of this moss farm into bone meal. First off, I'll start off by expanding this water stream out a few blocks, and break that sign. Now I'll just cut the water stream early here with a sign, and like before, you'll need either honey or ender chests. Now, down here, we can add the chests in. These will store the bone meal, some hoppers leading into the chests, and a 2x3 area of composters with hoppers on top. We'll put some more blocks here, a sign here, and water here. This is what you need for a single module of the moss farm. This is also completely expandable. In case you want to have enough for a second module, just put in more chests, hoppers, composters, and hoppers, and just expand it like this, and now you've got enough for 2 modules. And the other thing I want to show is a faster redstone clock design for this farm. This redstone clock here is 3 redstone ticks faster than the comparator clock design that I used before. You might recognize this redstone clock as being the same one Ilmango used in his moss farm. And this is simply the fastest redstone clock that still works with the stone generators properly. To compensate for this faster redstone clock, though, I had to make some other changes with this farm, because these water flushers here would break and not allow moss to be generated with the previous design. So, to fix that, I curved the rails here earlier, so that I could put a block here with a redstone torch and a repeater and 4 ticks into a block. Over here, I could just put the block and torch on it. And the other thing I changed is that every single item in the default position is in front of the comparators in the dropper cyclers. Here's the clock working. As you can see now, the water will only come out once every 3rd cycle of the clock to compensate for the faster clock, whereas before the water would be out for 2 of the 3 cycles. Here's just a closer look at the clock so you know how to make it. There's a repeater and 4 ticks here, here, and here. This repeater here's on 3 ticks, and this sticky piston here has a slime block with an observer facing up on it. Now, for the extensions here, you don't actually have to make any changes to compensate for the new clock, except if you have a sideways extension like from here to here, you just need to switch one of these repeaters to 1 tick. Of course, you don't actually have to use this faster redstone clock design. The comparative clock I showed before works well enough, though if you want a tiny boost in efficiency, this might be for you. The one downside of using this new clock, though, is chances are when you turn the farm on to harvest, and then when you turn it off, the last batch of items will remain behind, but that's usually nothing to worry about because you'll have the farm running most of the time, and a few remaining items don't really matter. And that basically wraps up everything. If you'd like some additional clarification, I'll be providing the world download. But that's all I've got for now, so thank you all so much for watching. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. Once again, thank you all so much for watching, and goodbye.